Welcome to the Ask Faleskini, the Clarity Compass podcast. I'm proud to present Elizabeth Hudson, transformational life coach and spiritual teacher. Elizabeth, welcome to the show. Please tell us more about yourself.
Peter, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. So, I have been a spiritual teacher for almost 20 years now. So, I've been teaching a methodology of Kundalini yoga and mindfulness, so meditation practices. And then I've segued that into spiritual coaching. So, I'm a certified life coach, but I specialize in focusing on spirituality. So, really coming from what is your connection to your higher self? What is your connection to divine energy? And that doesn't necessarily have to be religious. It's really about what that means for your own journey. And then starting from where you are, where can we go from here? So, it's less excavative, meaning not necessarily looking back at the past as much as traditional therapy is, but really activating okay, what can we do in the present moment to be more present and continue into creating a future that we want?
Excellent. I have
Yes.
first question in mind already, and that
Great.
is how can midlifers that have just find out that uh, they feel stuck and uncertain, how can they connect to their spirituality? Some of them are religious or were brought up in a religious way, but
Yep.
most of them are extremely or under extreme stress, and they have, let's say, um, limited amount of time that they can dedicate to spirituality. Because when we talk about spirituality, we think about, okay, I have to go to Nepal for like 6 months, and then
Yes. Mm, mm.
things will start developing. So, how can an average US midlifer that has, let's say, a job or maybe even working a second job and is trying to make ends meet or trying to do their next big thing or develop their business, how can they benefit of spirituality, and where should they start?
That's such a good question. As you were talking, I was thinking my ideal client is a midlifer, honestly, because they've they've gone through enough that they understand to not make a lot of the rookie mistakes we tend to make as we're growing uh, into adulthood and beyond, but also have ideally done a bunch of the excavative work, meaning like perhaps examined their family of origin and gone through like what worked with their family of origin, what didn't, or what worked with their religion for them, and what maybe they want to discard or doesn't resonate. So ideally my coaching client is coming from that space that they've arrived at this space of I know enough but I'm still not fully satisfied. I want to go deeper. And that's really where we have the opportunity, and often the quote unquote midlife crisis is an opportunity for expansion. It's saying all the things that I was taught to chase, right? Money, success, looks, all the superficial things, even if I've achieved them, aren't necessarily giving me the fulfillment, the hope, the expansion that I had wanted. And so then what? Right? So when we're in that space of and then what, we are infinite possibilities. There's so much opportunity there. And so in terms of a relationship with spirituality, I differentiate religious belief versus spiritual belief in that religion tries to put a box around God, whereas spirituality stays in the question and stays in the openness that truly in our third dimensional self, we can't fully comprehend God in all its aspects. So, always respecting whatever religious beliefs people come from, but also asking, what does that mean to you personally? Where are you in that relationship with God? Not going through a guru or a church or something between you and God, but understanding that the kingdom of God is within. That is your opportunity to open to that and find freedom.
That is great. So I would be a bit stubborn. So where should they
Please.
go? So let's say I'm an average midlifer. What is my first step? How should I find a coach? Should I go to find a workshop or visit a retreat? What should I do? Where should I start my spiritual journey? Should I read a book? What is the one thing that you would recommend? Where is the starting point?
I would say yes, 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 and yes. Meaning be a seeker. Allow yourself to be open-minded, to let go of a lot of the prescriptions that were and the programming that was often given to us, to be able to let go of some of that and ask the questions. That's a spiritual journey. So read the books, do the meditation, find the courses, whatever is your personal journey. And in that seeking, there is the continual question. So I would start with, to be more pragmatic, meditation. Meditation is key. Starting your day, I always ask my clients, you have 3 minutes in the mornings. You have 3 minutes at some point in your day that you can sit in devotion, in quiet, in your breath, and just notice. That's really all it is. So it's separating ourselves from our thoughts and noticing that we are the observer watching the thoughts. And that's often a huge pivot for people because they think, I always say, don't always believe what you think, meaning we are not the thought, we are the observer watching the thought. And that alone starts to expand our awareness into seeing ourselves as more free, that we're not caught in this entanglement in the way that we had previously thought. So, meditation is the most important thing because that's about self awareness. And nobody can give you self awareness. That's your own inside job.
So should we start with the guided meditation or should we go at it alone? How should we proceed with meditation? Because for you it's so easy because you are a guru.
It's not. It's not.
So where do we start? And I know a lot of people that start with meditation and they have so many things going on in their head in the beginning. So how should we start with the guided meditation? Should we go in the gym or temple? And what is this the first step that midlifers should do to just get a feel of it?
That's such a good question because I think many people are intimidated by the idea of meditation because they think they have to sit down and suddenly be completely zen and thoughtless. And the truth is, meditation is, even for the most advanced meditator, is a continual process of letting go of the thoughts, of giving yourself the space, of giving yourself the lack of judgment of yourself. Am I doing it right? Oh, this is or worrying that it will be boring, right?
Mhm.
So much of our culture and so much of our society now is the overstimulation, the constant feeding of our minds of stimuli, right? We've got these devices constantly coming at us all the time. And so it's hard to sit in stillness, but it is often in that stillness we confront what we're avoiding, right? So in the Jungian sense, in the Carl Jung sense of the shadow self, right? Whatever we're running from will catch up with us or find us in other ways. So when we can sit with the shadow, we can sit with the parts of ourself that are slightly uncomfortable, we start to transcend our overreaction, our taking things too personally, our attracting the wrong people because we start to vibrate differently. It's all about frequency. So it's an opportunity to sit with your breath and sit with yourself. And I'm a huge proponent of mantra. I love chanting mantra. So mantra gives the monkey mind, right, that chattering brain, something to do while we can stay in the present moment. And it's fun.
And what is your favorite mantra?
I have so many, but I love Ardas Bai. This is a Sikh mantra. So it's Gurmukhi. It's ancient Sanskrit. And it's Ardas Bai, Amardas Guru, Amardas Guru, Ardas Bai, Ramdas Guru, Ramdas Guru, Ramdas Guru, Sachi Sahi. I know that sounds very complicated, but what it means is I'm grateful for prayers already answered. So it's that understanding that time is not linear, it's all happening at once. And when we hold that space of gratitude, we're attracting to us the desire, the thing that we want.
So, is gratitude part of spirituality?
Absolutely. Key component because it's the true measure of faith, meaning I'm grateful even for the obstacles because I know the obstacles are opportunities in disguise.
Okay. How should we learn to be grateful? Because even the midlifers are quite entitled as far as generation is concerned, because we were not born after the war, the World War, when things were tight and
Yes.
the economy is struggling, and our generation X and millennials, they just we feel entitled to so many things, and then we are frustrated instead of being grateful for things that we already have. So how can we, what's your, I say, um, how do you put your clients in the attitude of gratitude?
Yes. Well, thank you. And that's such a good point because I think when you've reached midlife, you've seen enough, right? That you have, you've probably had your heart broken a few times. There have been disappointments. There have also, been beautiful experiences. But one of the keys in midlife, I would say, is to remain grateful because we always have a choice, right? Bitter or better. I mean, there's the bumper sticker of it, but and that's a choice. So in order to not be bitter, we have to say, I'm grateful, even for that. Sorry, my dog. Even for that, meaning even the obstacles, even the painful lessons, that there was something I gleaned from it. And that's a choice. You can either gain something from it or you can become cynical and hardened by it. And that's mastery, right? That's the up leveling of a spiritual life and journey is to be able to take it in and say, I'm grateful.
Okay. My biggest problem with gratitude was that I understood gratitude as part of um, how you uh, basically how you build relationships, and that's part of the manners. And my biggest challenge was I was not I was grateful and I said thank you and blah blah blah, but I did not feel that. How do we go from being grateful because of the instructions from our coach to really feel gratitude inside? How do we achieve that state? How do we tune to that frequency?
I think that is such a good question. And I think a lot of it is being able to sit in the quiet and feel your nervous system calmed, right? Most people are operating in very activated nervous systems where their adrenaline is pumping and we're not even aware of it. So be able to give yourself a practice where you can actually sit in a calm breath, first and foremost, to start to experience that state. And then start to soften the heart center, right? In any way that we've hardened our heart or put up armor or protective energy around the heart, to start to sit in compassion. I often recommend to my clients there's a prayer, it's a Hawaiian prayer. It's called the Ho'oponopono prayer. Have you heard, you know this?
Yeah.
You're nodding, right? So thank you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. I thank you. To be able to say to ourselves, and it's really toward the self, right? Being able to be in that compassionate state toward ourself opens our heart not only to ourself, because mostly we are our own worst judge, but then to others as well. And that starts to flow the energy because the most important thing in spiritual awareness is an open heart. And that sounds cliche, but it is so profound ultimately because it is a shift in the frequency of the third dimension to the fourth dimension. And that's where the opening starts to happen. And what I mean by that is the more compassionate toward yourself, the more likely you are to feel gratitude, kindness, compassion, even toward those who wrong you, even toward those who you disagree with. There's enormous freedom in that. That's your own liberation.
Okay, you talk about open heart, and most midlifers struggle with how can they open a heart, or they have opened the heart so many times before and they got hurt. Where are the
Sure.
boundaries? How to learn how to set boundaries? What would you recommend?
So, yeah, I love that because it's often the joke being, once you reach your 50s, you give less Fs, right? You don't have the same attachment and the freedom of that. I would say once you reach midlife, you also hopefully have stronger boundaries, realizing that you can use, and I would say in a spiritual sense, the difference between judgment and discernment. Okay. So ideally, once you've reached midlife, you're using a more refined discernment. Judgment is an attachment. I care. I'm judging you. I'm comparing myself to you. I have an opinion and therefore I'm triggered. Discernment is saying that doesn't work for me. No, there's something in that frequency in that person that doesn't feel right to me, and I'm going to trust that instinct. Rather than what we've often done, and I can speak for myself in this, is say, I feel that feeling, but I'm going to ignore it and let them in anyway, right? Ideally, once we've reached the midlife, we have a more refined sense of discernment and we can and trust ourselves. I would say that first and foremost. Trust yourself in using it. There's nothing wrong with discernment and boundaries. And therefore, that might attract better opportunities, better people, because you're a little more uh, careful about who you let in and what you go towards or what you reject.
So you touched on emotional intelligence, and how do you suggest that midlifers should go about developing emotional intelligence? Is there any trick of the trade that you teach?
First, I think it starts with honesty toward yourself, right? Being able to sit with your own reactions, your own triggers, and question them. That takes enormous bravery to things that we start to notice. Wow, that person upsets me. And then sit with that. Why? Why? What can I learn about myself in that? And once we've reached midlife, hopefully we've gone through enough where we start to notice patterns, right? And in that space, you can give yourself permission to notice and to learn from. I'm a huge proponent of journaling, by the way. So I teach a course on that wonderful book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And it's a journey into remembering your creativity. So the idea being you're remembering it because we all come in as children creative. We are essentially creative beings. And when we remember that state, we access all sorts of creative solutions in our life because creativity isn't just about being a painter or a writer. It's about finding creative solutions for ourselves. So the point is we do journaling in the mornings and we call it morning pages, which is kind of a brain dump. And what that does is it gets out. So the idea is you write free form for just 3 pages or 15 minutes, whichever comes first, without editing, without thinking how it, has to sound. And in that way, you free yourself from all the things that are kind of worrying you or entangling you. And in that space, you open up to more downloads, to more creative solutions and opportunities. Have you ever done that kind of thing or heard of it?
Yep. I
Yeah.
I like journaling, and
Yes.
I also like what you say, free flow, so that it's not structured because
Right.
it's more um, uh, it just needs to get out. You just need to put things out, and then maybe they will make sense somewhere in the future. or they will never make
Exactly.
sense, or but will be just let's say a relief of
Yes,
something. And
exactly.
um, but that brings me to my next question, and I
Yes,
think
please.
that's connected because um, how should midlifers go about first discovering their inner child and then working with this inner child to improve, let's say, their own anima or their own soul, or find it, because we get stuck in these societal expectations. You have to have this kind of family, you have to have a house in this neighborhood, you have to work for this company, and you have to drive these cars, and you have to travel to these destinations. But it's not necessarily, or in majority, it's not what our inner child would do or what we would do when we were
Mhm.
young. So how do we discover the inner child? What do we really want to do? What makes us happy? What would, let's say, entertain our inner child?
Yeah, that's such a good point because I think what I would ask of my clients is always, what did you do as a child that you lost time, that you just got totally immersed, that you're playing and suddenly that world becomes your reality. I remember that in times when I was playing as a child where it became so real to me that I lost the whole day in this creative play. And so the question being, was it drawing? Was it walking out in nature? Was it swimming? What were you drawn to as a child? And that's usually a great roadmap to bring you back to yourself. So in any way that a lot of people midlife start to go, I don't feel passionate anymore. I don't care in the same way. I've lost that drive or that fire in my belly, right? And so whatever lit you up when you were younger is usually the map back to your connection with your higher self, with your inner child. They're one and the same, by the way. Your higher self and your inner child are one and the same. That is the authentic, pure version of your soul that incarnated in this body, in this life, with all these circumstances. And as a soul coach, as a spiritual coach, I always ask people to look at their life in that way. That if you came here and you made a contract in, the divine space to incarnate in this body, in this life, with these circumstances and these parents and these challenges, what was it for? What is the ultimate goal? What were the lessons you need to learn? And what can you gain from this? And in that way, if you see it as a game in a lot of ways, it frees you. You don't have to be as entangled in the worry and the anxiety. And go back to hobbies. So if you, I understand, everybody has obligations, mortgages to pay, kids to care for, jobs to keep. If you can find a few moments each day that are just yours, starting with meditation, starting with the most valuable thing you own is your imagination. All your freedom is within. When you start from that concept, the rest of the external world feels less burdensome. It feels less overwhelming. And that's true liberation. That's the revolution of the human spirit that's possible, that all the externalization is just a reflection of. And once we can start to open to that, the possibilities are infinite.
Okay, one more topic I want to cover before we conclude this episode is survival mode.
Yes.
A lot of people in the US and worldwide lives in survival mode. And it seems that midlife is where most of them are already in survival mode. So, what's your advice on how to get out of the survival mode, how to get in
Mhm.
thriving?
That's such a good point because that feels the worst, I think, that numbing that happens when people are so overwhelmed. And that feels worse than a lot of heartbreak because that apathy is where we feel lifeless, right? And so it's often an indicator when you recognize that in yourself, when you start to feel that midlife crisis, again, for lack of a, that's kind of the cliche, right? That starts to happen where people go, this isn't what I was hoping for. Wait a minute, this isn't what all that I had hoped and dreamed of. And so in that disappointment, there's a shutdown. So, first, recognizing the shutdown, recognizing I feel numb, noticing that, noticing what it felt like when you were younger, what lit you up, starts to give us first of all recognizing that okay, I don't want to live like this. I want to feel alive again, which is often why the midlife crisis, I'm going to buy the sports car, have an affair with a younger person, et cetera, right? That's something I want juice. I want something out of life. Before it's over, I want to grab at something. And unfortunately, that is coming from a state of desperation, which leads to bad choices. So, how do we recognize this with compassion and say, okay, I want to feel more alive? Great. What are ways that I can do this for myself that actually feel healthy? Go back to the gym, get back in the pool and swim your laps, find learn a new language, do things that add a little bit of edge to your life that was otherwise on one track. Start to expand. I always look at life this way. We have a start point at our birth, we have an end point at our death, and then the levels to which we are able to expand into is up to us. And so, how richly you're able to live each moment. So, again, I always say start with a meditation practice, start with journaling, start to notice, I don't like my life. Okay, great. Then what are you going to do about it? And that's the activation point. That's why, as a coach, I can say, okay, so what are steps, actions, habits we can change to get us into the state that we do want to live? And it's brave, and not everybody can do it. That's not true. Not everyone does it. Everybody can do it. Not everybody does it. And so, again, understanding our free will is key.
Okay. Thank you very much for all these insights. Please let us know where can our listeners reach you and what product they can buy of you.
Thank you, Peter. So I am Elizabeth-Hudson.com, and I have a podcast called Sacred Alchemy, which is both on iTunes and Spotify, which is about the convergence of spirituality and sexuality. So coming from a healed, conscious space, looking at our sexuality from that perspective. So again, Elizabeth-Hudson.com. And you can reach out for my services and coaching, which I do in person here in Los Angeles and also by Zoom anywhere in the world.
Thank you very much again for these insights. I will try to include all the links in the description below. And thank you, Elizabeth, for being my guest tonight.
Oh, Peter, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.